The night was quiet, but something felt strange inside the big mansion of Mr. Raymond Blake. He was a billionaire, famous for his sharp mind and strict rules. People respected him, and some feared him too. His house had long hallways, shining floors, and cold air that made everything feel serious. It was almost midnight. Most of the workers had gone home. Only one person was still in the house, Mira, the maid who worked there for almost 3 years. She was known for being gentle, polite, and very hardworking. She never created any problem. She never complained. She always smiled. But tonight, her face had no smile. Raymond was in his office checking some documents when he heard a soft beep on his security screen. It was the sound of the CCTV motion alert. He looked at the monitor with tired eyes, and there he saw something that made his eyebrows raise. Mira was standing in front of the fridge, but she wasn't cleaning it. She wasn't organizing anything. She was slowly opening it like she was searching for something inside. Raymond watched the screen carefully. She looked nervous. Her hands were shaking. She opened the fridge, looked inside for about 10 seconds, and then quickly shut it. After that, she wiped her tears with her sleeve. Tears. Raymond felt a sharp shock. What is she doing? And why is she crying? He whispered to himself. He didn't wait. Anger took over his brain. To him, it looked simple. She was checking the fridge secretly. Maybe to take food. Maybe to steal? That thought made him furious. He rushed out of his office and walked fast through the silent hallway. His footsteps echoed loudly. The mansion seemed even bigger and darker in that moment. When he reached the kitchen, he found Mira standing with her back toward him. She was quietly wiping the counter, pretending everything was normal. But her red eyes told another story. What do you think you were doing? Raymond's voice was sharp and cold. Myra froze. She slowly turned around. Her face looked pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I saw you opening the fridge, Raymond said angrily. At this hour? Without permission? Why? Mira lowered her eyes. Her hands were still shaking. I am sorry, sir, she whispered. Sorry? That's all you can say? Raymond stepped closer. Are you stealing? Are you taking food from my kitchen? Mira quickly shook her head. No, sir. I would never do that. Enough. Raymond didn't let her finish. You are fired. Mira looked shocked, like the world had stopped around her. Tears slowly formed in her eyes again, but she wiped them away quickly. She didn't argue. She didn't fight back. She didn't even defend herself. She only said softly, I understand, sir. Thank you for giving me work all these years. Her voice broke a little. Raymond felt a tiny pain in his chest, but his pride was stronger. He stayed silent. Mira walked out of the kitchen, her steps slow and heavy. She picked up her small bag from the service room and walked toward the main gate. She did not look back even once. The giant doors closed behind her, and the mansion returned to silence. But the silence felt different this time. Raymond stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the fridge. His anger slowly cooled down, and confusion took its place. Why didn't she defend herself? Why was she crying before opening the fridge? Why did she look so weak? He remembered how she always worked quietly, how she never made mistakes, how she always greeted everyone with respect. Strange feelings started growing inside him, guilt. He tried to shake it off, but the image of Mira's tearful eyes kept coming back into his mind, again and again. Raymond walked back to his office, but he could not focus on anything. The house felt too quiet, too empty, and for the first time in a long time, he felt uneasy. Something was wrong. Something he didn't know yet. Something hidden behind that fridge moment, and soon. That hidden truth was going to change everything. The night passed slowly inside the giant mansion. But Raymond Blake could not sleep. His room felt too bright, even with the lights off. His mind kept showing him the same picture again and again. Mira, standing in front of the fridge with tears in her eyes. He turned in his bed, changed the pillow, drank water, walked around the room, but nothing helped. His heart kept asking questions. His brain refused to answer. Why was she crying? Why didn't she defend herself? Why did she look so weak? Raymond tried to convince himself that firing her was the correct decision. Rules are rules. She broke them, that's what he told himself. But deep inside, he felt something was wrong. Something he had not understood. At 6 a.m., Raymond finally got out of bed. His eyes were tired, and his head felt heavy. He went downstairs to his office, hoping work would distract him. But as soon as he sat in his chair, he noticed a small folder on the corner of his desk. It was Mira's worker file. She must have forgotten to take it when she left. Raymond slowly opened it. The first page showed her simple photo, a gentle smile, tired eyes, and a humble expression. Her background information was neat. Punctual, hardworking, never caused trouble. He flipped more pages. Notes from the house manager said, Mira is always honest and respectful. She helps other staff without expecting anything. Another line said, never took a single day off without reason. Raymond leaned back in his chair. His chest felt tight. If she was always so loyal, why would she suddenly steal food? His assistant, Mr. Phillip, entered the room quietly. Good morning, sir. You look tired. Raymond ignored the comment. Phillip, he said seriously, tell me something. In all these years, did Mira ever do anything wrong? Anything suspicious? Phillip shook his head. Never. She was probably the most honest worker we had. Ramon did not reply. He just stared at the file again. Phillip hesitated, then said softly, Sir, maybe she had a reason last night. Maybe something happened. Raymond felt a strange discomfort. Reason? She was checking my fridge? What reason could be good enough for that? Phillip stayed silent for a moment. Sir, sometimes people do things because they are in pain. Maybe she was hungry. Maybe she needed something. Maybe she was struggling. The word struggling hit Raymond. Like a stone, he suddenly remembered the moment from the CCTV Mira wiping her. Tears before opening the fridge. Why would someone cry before stealing food? Stealing is usually done quickly in fear, not with tears. Raymond's thoughts were spinning. Phillip slowly said, Sir, I think you should watch the cameras again. Not only last night's, maybe the whole week. Ramon looked up sharply. Why? Phillip sighed. Because she looked very weak these days. I noticed she hardly ate. She always said she was fine, but she did not look fine. Raymond felt his heartbeat quicken. We have recordings? Yes, sir. The security team saves everything. Deep silence filled the room. Raymond tapped his fingers on the desk, thinking hard. Part of him wanted to forget the whole thing and move on. But another part, the stronger part, needed answers. He finally stood up. Call the security room. I want all footage from the past 7 days. Phillip nodded and left. Raymond walked to the window and looked outside. The morning sun lit the garden beautifully, but he felt no peace. He tried to breathe slowly, but something inside him kept tightening. For the first time in a long time, he felt powerless. He had fired someone without knowing the truth, and now he feared the truth might hurt him. Phillip returned. Sir, the footage is ready. Raymond took a deep breath and followed him to the security room. The screens were bright with timestamps and camera angles. Play it, Raymond said. The footage started. Raymond watched Mira working silently, moving slowly, often holding her stomach like she was in pain. He saw her skipping meals, drinking only water, sitting alone, looking exhausted. His chest hurt more with every second, and he didn't know. The real shock was still waiting for him. Raymond stood in front of the large security screens, his eyes fixed, his breathing slow. The room felt cold, even though the heater was on. The bright cameras showed different parts of the mansion hallways, the garden, the stairs, the kitchen, but Raymond focused only on one thing, Mira. The first clip showed her entering the mansion early morning. She looked tired, her hair tied loosely, her clothes a little old, but always clean. She greeted the other staff, and they greeted her back warmly. She smiled at them, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Raymond felt a small twist in his stomach. Play the next day, he said quietly. Phillip switched the screen. Now it showed Mira working in the dining hall. Others were eating breakfast, but she only poured herself a glass of water. She touched her stomach gently, as if she was hungry but forcing herself to ignore it. Her hands looked weak. Then she walked past the fridge area, stopped for a moment, looked at it, and then walked away quickly. Raymond leaned closer. Why did she stop there? Philip didn't know. He stayed silent. Next clip, Raymond ordered. The third day video played. Mira cleaned the living room carefully. She smiled at the gardeners, helped the chef carry boxes, and fixed the waiter's torn glove. She helped everyone, but she did not eat anything again. She kept drinking water. Later that evening, she stood in the kitchen alone. She looked around to make sure nobody was there. Her face looked sad. She slowly opened the fridge, but only 1 inch. She did not touch anything. She only stared inside, and then closed it fast. Her lips moved. She whispered something. Raymond leaned forward, trying to hear, but the audio was too weak. Her expression looked like silent pain. Raymond felt something heavy in his chest. Go to the 4th day. The camera showed something even more shocking. Mira was wiping the kitchen floor when she suddenly stopped and grabbed the counter like she was losing her balance. She breathed fast, closed her eyes, and then sat on the floor. A few seconds later, she fainted. Raymond's heart jumped. A junior staff member entered the kitchen, panicked, and helped her stand. Mira smiled weakly and said she was just tired. She refused medical help. She got up slowly and returned to work, pretending everything was normal. Raymond clenched his jaw. Why did nobody tell me this? He said in anger. Philip spoke carefully. Sir, she begged us not to tell you. She said she didn't want to lose her job. Raymond said nothing. His heart was beating louder. Next clip, he said, voice low. The 5th day footage played. Mira entered the kitchen at night when everyone else was sleeping. She looked nervous again. She touched the fridge door, but she didn't open it. Instead, she wiped her tears and leaned her head against the fridge like she was asking it a question. Why? Raymond's throat felt dry. Then the screen switched to the final night. She was fired. Raymond's heart pounded. He watched Mira walk into the kitchen slowly. She opened the fridge not to steal, but to check something small, something hidden behind the milk bottles. She reached behind the jars, but before she could pull anything out, she suddenly froze. Her eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth to stop her crying sound. She closed the fridge and wiped her face. Raymond sucked in a breath. Pause, he said sharply. Philip paused the screen. There, Raymond whispered, zoom behind the milk. Philip zoomed the frame carefully. A small object appeared. A little box. A tiny container. Something he had never noticed before. What is that? Raymond asked. Philip shook his head. I'm not sure, sir. Raymond stared at the screen. His heartbeat felt like thunder. For the first time, he sensed he had made a terrible mistake. Play it again, he said softly. The clip continued. Mira cried silently, closed the fridge, and whispered, just one more day. One more day. Why? Raymond felt his chest tighten. He finally understood something simple yet painful. Mira wasn't stealing food. She was searching for something. She hid something, connected to her pain. And he was about to find out exactly what that. As the room felt silent, as Raymond stared at the frozen frame on the CCTV screen. That small box behind the milk bottles bothered him. It was something he had never seen before. Something that did not belong to his kitchen. Something hidden. Philip, he said slowly, bring me that box, now. Philip nodded and rushed to the kitchen. Raymond continued, staring at the screen. His heart felt heavy, and his mind was filled with thoughts he did not want to think. He replayed Mira's face again, the way she cried, the way she whispered, just one more day. What did she mean? Why did she need one more day? What was she hiding? Minutes felt like hours, until Philip returned, holding a small silver lunchbox. It looked cheap and old, the kind of box mothers used to send snacks with school children. Philip placed it gently on the table. Raymond's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside the box were 3 simple things: a few small biscuits, a folded note. A tiny picture of a young boy. Raymond stared at the items without blinking. The biscuits looked dry, almost stale. They weren't from his kitchen. They were the kind you get from cheap roadside shops. The picture was of a little boy with big eyes and a bright smile. He looked around 6 years old. But it was the note that made Raymond freeze. He opened it slowly. The handwriting was shaky but loving. The note said, "Stay strong, Mama. I know you will find my medicine soon. I love you." Raymond felt something break inside his chest. His fingers tightened around the paper. Philip spoke softly, "Sir, I think this is Mira's son." Raymond swallowed hard. He looked again at the picture. The boy's smile was full of hope. Hope that Mira clearly struggled to give him. Suddenly, everything made sense. Her skipping meals, her fainting in the kitchen, her crying in front of the fridge, her whispering just one more day. She wasn't hungry because she didn't want to eat. She was hungry because she wanted to save money. Every coin, every rupee, every small piece of her salary, she needed money for medicine. Raymond felt sick. He pressed his fingers against his forehead, trying to breathe. Philip said, "Sir, she was saving food for her son. Maybe she kept biscuits here because she didn't want anyone to see them in her bag." Raymond nodded slowly. She hid them to keep them safe. Maybe to bring them home later, he realized. Mira opened the fridge every day, not to steal food, but to check that her little box was still there, to make sure no one threw it away, to make sure her son had something to eat when she returned home. His throat tightened painfully. "How could I be so blind?" he whispered. Philip didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Raymond looked at the screen again. The moment she cried inside the kitchen, it wasn't fear of being caught. It was fear of losing her last hope. Her son. He looked at the boy's picture again. His little smile now felt like a knife in Raymond's heart. Myra had carried this heavy pain alone. She never told anyone. She kept working quietly, even while starving, even while fainting, and he fired her. Without asking a single question, he felt ashamed in a way he had never felt before. His wealth, his power, his giant house, none of it mattered now. All he could see was the pain he caused because of his own anger. Suddenly, he stood up. "Philip, where does Mira live?" Philip hesitated. "Sir, a very poor area. A small rented room. She never wanted to give full address because she felt embarrassed." "Find it," Raymond said firmly. "I need to meet her today." Philip nodded and left the room immediately. Raymond held the picture of the little boy again. "I hurt your mother," he whispered to himself. "I must fix it." He didn't know what he would say. He didn't know if she would even open the door for him. But one thing was sure. He had to find her. And he had to make things right.
Raymond Blake sat in the back seat of his black car as it moved through the crowded city streets. The tall buildings slowly disappeared, replaced by narrow lanes, broken walls, and small houses that looked tired from years of struggle. He had never been to this part of the city before. It felt like another world, silent, heavy, forgotten. Philip sat beside the driver, guiding him. "Sir, this is the area Myra mentioned once." She didn't want anyone to know. She felt shy about her situation. Raymond nodded, but his mind was somewhere else. He held the small picture of the little boy tightly, as if it were a compass guiding him toward the truth he had ignored for too long. The car finally stopped outside a rusty building with cracked paint. Clothes hung from broken balconies. A few children played in the dirt, while an old woman sat on a stool watching them. Philip pointed. "Sir, Myra's room is on the second floor. The one with the blue curtain." Raymond stepped out of the car. The air smelled of dust and dampness. He had never walked on such uneven ground before. His expensive shoes looked strange here. Everything felt unfamiliar, yet something pulled him forward with force. He reached the small staircase and climbed slowly. Each step creaked under his weight. When he reached the blue curtain, he paused. His heart beat faster. He lifted his hand and knocked on the metal door behind the curtain. A moment later, it opened slightly. Myra stood there. Her eyes widened in shock. She wasn't dressed for work. She wore an old faded dress, and her hair was tied loosely. She looked thinner than before. More tired. More fragile. "Sir?" she whispered, unable to believe he was standing at her door. Raymond spoke softly. "Myra, I need to talk to you. May I come in?" She hesitated for a long second, then stepped aside. Her room was small, so small that Raymond felt he could touch all four walls if he stretched his arms. There was one thin mattress on the floor, a tiny stove, and a few worn-out pots. Nothing more. On the mattress lay a little boy. His eyes were half open, and his breathing was weak. He tried to sit up when he saw a stranger enter. "Mama, who is he?" the boy asked. Myra quickly sat beside him. "It's okay. Don't move, Rian." Raymond's heart sank. Rian. The name from the note. Myra looked at Raymond nervously. "Sir, why are you here?" Raymond took a slow breath. "Because I found your lunchbox." She froze. Her hands tightened on her dress. Her eyes filled with fear, not for herself, but for what he might think. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. "I didn't want to hide anything. I just didn't want the biscuits to get wet in the rain outside. And I didn't want anyone to take them away." Raymond stepped closer. "Myra, why didn't you tell me about your son?" Her eyes dropped. "Because it is not your problem, sir. It is my life, my burden. I didn't want to lose my job by asking for help." He felt his chest tighten painfully. "You fainted. You skipped meals. You cried alone. Why didn't you speak?" Myra's voice trembled. "Because I needed every rupee. His medicine is very expensive. I eat less so I can save money. I only checked the fridge to see if maybe there was food left over, something I could bring home for him. But I never touched anything. I promise, I never stole." Raymond felt tears burning the back of his eyes. "I know, Myra. I know everything now." Her lips shook. "When you fired me, I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I would lose him, because I can't buy medicine now." Rian reached out and touched her hand weakly. "Mama, don't cry." Raymond couldn't watch anymore. He knelt beside the boy. "Rian," he said gently, "you're going to be okay. I promise." The boy blinked. "Are you a doctor?" Raymond shook his head. "No, but I will take you to the best doctor." Myra covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Raymond stood and faced her. "Myra, I made a mistake. A big one. I judged you without knowing your truth. But now I will fix everything." Her tears fell faster, but this time they carried relief, not fear. Raymond Blake stood in the small room, watching Myra cry quietly beside her son. Something inside him had changed forever. The billionaire who once cared only about rules, discipline, and order now felt a deep ache he had never known. He had judged too quickly, spoken too harshly, and hurt someone who was already hurting every single day. He turned toward Philip. "Call the hospital. The best one. Tell them I am bringing a child who needs emergency treatment." Philip nodded and rushed outside to make the call. Myra looked frightened. "Sir, hospital? But I don't have money. They won't even allow us through the gate." Raymond moved a step closer. "Myra, you don't have to worry about money. I will handle everything." Her eyes widened like she didn't believe what she heard. "But sir, why? Why would you do this?" Raymond looked at Rian, who stared back at him with weak yet hopeful eyes. "Because I should have listened. I should have asked you what was wrong. I fired you without understanding your pain. The mistake was mine." Before Myra could respond, Rian coughed softly. His small body shook from the effort. Raymond's heart squeezed painfully. "No more talking," he said gently. "Let's take him now." He bent down and carefully lifted the boy into his arms. Rian felt light, too light for a child his age. It scared Raymond how fragile he was. As they walked down the narrow stairs, neighbors peeked from their doors. They stared in shock at the sight of a billionaire carrying a poor woman's child through their broken building. Some whispered, some gasped, but Raymond didn't care. He only focused on getting Rian the help he needed. The car door opened, and Raymond laid the boy gently on the back seat. Myra sat beside her son, holding his hand like she was holding her whole world. The drive to the hospital felt long, even though the driver was moving fast. When they arrived, doctors rushed forward immediately, because Raymond had called ahead. Rian was taken to the emergency room. Myra tried to follow, but a nurse stopped her. "We will update you soon." Myra turned to Raymond in fear. "Sir, what if?" He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He will be okay. Trust me." For the next 2 hours, they waited in silence. Myra prayed with her head bowed. Raymond stood beside her with a heavy heart, feeling responsible for everything she had endured. Finally, a doctor came out. "Mr. Blake," he said, "the boy had a severe infection. If he arrived even a day later, it could have been dangerous. But now, he is stable. He will recover." Myra covered her face and sobbed with relief. Raymond let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Can we see him?" he asked. "Yes," the doctor replied with a smile. Inside the room, Rian lay peacefully with tubes attached to his small hand. His eyes opened slowly when he heard the door. "Mama," he whispered. Myra rushed to him. "I'm here, my son. I'm here." Rian looked at Raymond. "Uncle, thank you." Those simple words hit Raymond harder than any business success ever had. He sat beside the boy. "You are very strong, Rian. Get better soon. Your mama needs you." Rian nodded weakly. Myra wiped her tears. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You saved him." Raymond shook his head. "No, Myra. He survived because of your strength. I only fixed the mistake I made." He stood slowly. "From today, you have your job back. And a higher salary."